post-lunch session. Today we have the very young and dynamic personality, Dr. Tarun Patel sir, who is the Assistant Professor of English and Communication Skill. Sir has completed his Diploma in Advanced Computing in 2001, B.Ed in 2004, Master MA in English Language Teaching in 2007, MPhil in English Language Teaching 2010. Sir has completed his PhD in English from the very well reputed university, MS University of Baroda, from 2017. Dr. Tarun sir started his career as an English tutor, Federation of Gujarati Samaj, Europe, from June 2004 to April 2005. He has served his duty as a resource person, communication skill and English at H.M. Patel Career Development Center, Vallabh Vidyanagar, from 2005 to 2007. Sir has served his duty as an assistant professor in communication skill at Faculty of Management, Charotar University of Science and Technology, also known as the Charuset, in from 2007 to 2011. Sir has also served his duty as an assistant professor English and communication skill at Santilal Shah Government Engineering College, Bhavnagar, from May 2011 to July 2015. Currently, Sir is working as an assistant professor English and communication skill, Government Engineering College, Gandhinagar. Sir has affiliated with the as a member in English Language Teacher Association of India, editor, Sodhkan International Referred and Reviewed Journal, editor Technology in ELT, a quarterly national journal of English language teacher published by the Education Campus Changa, editor in ELT Weekly, India's first ELT Weekly e-news letter, editor and contributor in Communication Weekly, a communication improvement newsletter for everyone. Sir is the editor in ELT Voice, India International Journal, editor at TESOL Journal. Sir is also the editor in ICT in Education International Journal. Sir has published 21 national and international articles in his credit. Sir has attended more than 20 national and international conferences. Dr. Patel has delivered his talk in many national level conferences. We really welcome this dynamic personality in our faculty development program. Now I request to sir to take a charge of this session.
Thank you very much, Naitik sir, for your kind words. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, sir. So, good afternoon, everyone. Naitik sir, have you been able to send that form to everyone, or no, it wasn't possible?
Sir, it is possible through the Meet chat.
Okay,
Can
fine.
I send now or after the session or in between the session?
So what we'll do is, let me just send it, dear all, we will take 5 minutes to fill up this form, and once we have inputs from everyone, we shall begin the session. So I'll just share the link. Kindly fill it up. It won't take more than 2 to 3 minutes, right? Your opinions would matter in today's discussion. So please fill it up. I am waiting, and then we will move on.
Sir, please give me permission because it needs permission to open the file.
Sure, I'll just do that, sir. Thank you.
Yes.
Now it should be working.
Yes, sir. Thank you. It's now working.
Thank you, sir. So, all right, yeah. Thank you very much, Anuga ma'am, for submitting the inputs. Well, we shall be looking at the data in visual format in the meanwhile. All right. Today, Naitik, Dr. Naitik has asked me to talk about changing paradigm of teaching and learning. And perhaps ours is the generation that has experienced a dynamic, like perhaps the most dynamic shift in the teaching learning pattern, right? Uh, the platforms like Google Meet, Zoom have been with us for almost 10 years now, right? All of us must have used Skype for making long distance video calls some or the other time, right? And once upon a time, somewhere in 2008, I could observe that some people were offering online consultation, and Skype was providing a feature that, like you can charge certain amount for the certain duration. So people who were into digital marketing, they used to charge around $250 per hour for providing one-to-one consultation to somebody, right? At that time it was, like it sounded like impossible, right? That how could somebody would be spending $150 for learning something within 1 hour? And like we would immediately convert it into INR, and we would realize that it is, my god, it is 7,500 rupees, right? 7,500 is wasn't a small amount then, just 11 years back. And today, we have been seeing the rise of so many online teaching platforms, right? Tatas are the new entry. They have recently launched a new app called Tata Study, wherein, like they would be teaching the students affiliated to CBSE schools, standard 1 to 8. And the older players do exist, like the online training platforms could sponsor the whole Indian cricket team even, right? So that's why I'm saying that we are the generation that has seen a dramatic shift, and COVID has, like changed the way we used to teach online, or we used to learn online. Otherwise we would have been sitting at ARCP, AR College of Pharmacy, the host college, right? All of you would be sitting, all 111 people would be sitting in the room, and I would be speaking from the podium, right? And you might have got exhausted, like traveling from different parts of the country, or in most possible situation, like we would be assuming, we can feel that, oh, it would not have been possible to be in such a group, right? Heterogeneous group wherein people are from so many states of the country, right? Like we can just check out our names. There are Patels and Kapadiyas and Trivedi, and we have Upadhyay and Singh, right? Kuldeep Singh. So, otherwise you would be seeing people that belong to the Charota region where this college is located. People from nearby colleges would be able to make it for such kind of a training. But this pandemic has expanded our wings in a way. So, my interaction is divided into small chunks. First, we will go through what paradigm is and how things have been changing. I have found out a beautiful document on how the teaching learning is changing when it comes to the shift from teacher-centered classroom to the student-centered classroom. Okay, so I'll start with my first few slides. Then we shall have a look at the inputs that we have received, and then we will go to the next resource that I have with me. All right. I hope my screen is visible to everyone. Could you please confirm in the chat box whether my screen is visible? Anyone? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Supriya. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Ramya. Thank you very much, Hetal ma'am. Thank you. Yeah, all right. So, paradigm, the word comes from the Greek. The meaning is framework or an example, right? And it is related to a set of concepts or practices, which is a mode of inquiry together with the related theories, principles, models, taxonomies, methods, rules, and assumptions. And these rules and assumptions and methods define and provide the example of or framework for a given knowledge domain, whether it is science, humanities, or arts, and it fits into that particular discipline or the field. These paradigms have been used by every one of us to create the syllabus and to deal with it in a way so that we are able to help students visualize and learn what we wish them to, right? If we compare the old and the new paradigms of teaching, right, we do not want to go back to the history and how things were taught, but let's try to just find out what we are doing, right? So in terms of knowledge, in according to the old paradigm, it was transferred from faculty to the students, and now we see ourselves working very closely with our students so that we can come out with some innovative solutions, right? We have been seeing the rise of those so many startups. Now, what are these startups? They are the result of our collaborative efforts with our students, right? We do not anymore just teach or preach, right? If we want our students to grow, we have to be with them all the time. And fortunately, the pandemic has connected us all, right? Your student would be able to send a query at the middle of the night and you would be able to receive it whenever you are online, isn't it? So in a way, this pandemic has given us an opportunity to stay connected with our students and help them in the process of learning. Now, thinking of students, according to the old paradigm, it was like passive access to be filled by faculty's knowledge, and now according to the new paradigm, it is active constructor, discoverer, transformer of the knowledge. Like they are able to convert the knowledge into ideas. They are able to connect the knowledge and ideas and come out with the results. Faculty purpose, it was classify and sort students, and developing according to the new paradigm, it is developing students' competencies as well as the talents. The new paradigm in terms of the relationship helps you, like transact among the students and between the faculty and students. Like we are able to move closely to the students, as I am saying, and that helps us grow together. In terms of context, the old paradigm was, competitive but individualistic, right? Wherein, like the teacher's ego was at the top. Whereas the new paradigm has moved it to cooperative learning in classroom and cooperative teams among faculty as well as the administration. And then when it comes to the assumptions about teaching, earlier it was any expert that can be there would teach. And now it is teaching is complex and requires considerable training, right? So we have been able to see the specialization in the areas where there is demand, and that specialization results into the expertise that has some sort of deliverables. When it comes to the ways of knowledge, earlier it was logico-scientific and now it is narrative, right? Constructivist approach has also been possible with the new paradigm, wherein, like, because as I'm saying it again and again, we have been able to be with the students to make sure that they learn, they practice. All right. And the mode of learning, which was earlier memorizing, now it is relating. They are able to relate. They are able to identify the relationship of the theory that's been taught with the way they are going to apply. All right. In terms of climate, it was conformity, cultural uniformity, and now it is diversity and personal esteem, as well as cultural diversity and commonality that exists, whether you are in India or the America. Moving on, the old paradigm of teaching was based on John Locke's assumption that the untrained student mind is like a blank sheet of paper waiting for the instructor to write on it. Because of this, the other assumptions, educators have often thought of teaching in terms of several principal activities. They are: one, transferring knowledge from teacher to student. So the teacher's job was to give it, the student's job is to get it, and teachers transmit information that students are expected to memorize and then recall at the time of the examination. Similarly, it was to fill passive empty vessels with knowledge, as I just like mentioned while we were looking at the table, where students were passive recipients of knowledge and teachers own the knowledge, and that's why that ego stays at the top, right? The knowledge that students memorize and recall. Classifying students by deciding who gets which grade, and sorting students into categories by deciding who does and doesn't meet the requirements to be graduated or go on to the college and get a good job. Now, this is done based on the assumption that ability is fixed and unaffected by effort and education. Constant inspection is used to weed out defective students. Moving on, conducting education within a context of impersonal relationships among the students and between teachers and students, based on the tailor-made model of industrial organization. Students and teachers are perceived to be interchangeable and replaceable parts in the education machine, and maintaining a competitive organizational structure in which students work to outperform their classmates and teachers work to outperform their colleagues, right? So that was sort of competition which does exist at many places, and assuming that anyone with expertise in a field can teach. So this is sometimes known as the content premise. If you have a PhD in the field, you can teach regardless of whether or not you have any pedagogical training, and perhaps we have been seeing that trend, right? The courses like B.Ed and M.Ed are taken by certain people only. I mean, so for example, if you are teaching in engineering college and you are an engineer without any formal training, you would be able to get in and teach, right? So there lies a gap when it comes to making sure that a kind of synchronization that has to be there among all the students, irrespective of the one who is teaching English, the one who is teaching mathematics, or the one who is teaching the mechanical engineering. If a teacher of mathematics has to or wants to teach in a school, he would be required to have a B.Ed degree, Bachelor of Education. But the same person, if he wants to go into college and teach there, no, B.Ed is not required. Like that surprises me, and it should surprise everyone, in fact. The old paradigm is to transfer teachers' knowledge to passive students to teachers, so that teachers can classify and store students in a norm referenced way through competition. Many teachers consider the old paradigm the only possibility, lecturing while requiring students to be passive, silent, isolated, and in competition with each other seem the only way to teach. The old paradigm is carried forward by sheer momentum, while almost anyone persists in the hollow pretense that all is well, but unfortunately, it is not. I will stop sharing this one for a moment, and we'll go back to somewhere else. Yeah. Okay. Now we are just looking at the inputs that we have just given, right? I'm extremely happy that we are a truly, diverse group, teaching in pharmacy and engineering, chemistry and dermatology and management and quality assurance and business communication, English literature and modern methods of analytics, and oh my god, educational psychology, right? We are such a heterogeneous group at the moment. Now, if we look at the first question, just a second. Yeah. If you look at the first question, the tools that we all have been using to teach online, most of us use this one, Google Classroom, that we are using right now, 15% Microsoft Teams. Again, another majority has Zoom, GoToMeeting also has a big share, and the other. All right. When it comes to having sufficient knowledge of computer and IT skills to conduct the online lectures, we have almost 15% people who are neutral, some 3% people do not believe, or that they are having adequate knowledge of IT and computer, right? So it's almost 5%, 15% we are neutral, and just 32% of us strongly agree that yeah, I am competent enough. It's good reflection. Similarly, being comfortable in teaching online, 50%, that's a good number, 50% of us are able to feel comfortable teaching online, plus 20%, so it's almost 70% of us are all right with online teaching. 22% are net neutral, and then again 6%, approximately 6 plus 3, 9% are in a little trouble. Online tools are easy to use when conducting online lectures. Yeah, so it's again huge. 67% say yes, it is. 25% neutral. Then some 7%. It was difficult. When it comes to online lectures are more effective than traditional or live. So yes, 55% plus 12. So that's 75% believe that no, they are not. They are not effective as compared to the traditional or live classrooms. But unfortunately, we will have to find out a way so that we reach to the purple that, okay, we strongly agree that online lectures are more effective, right? Because we will have to be with our students, like, for example, like we have our students, we have our kids. So perhaps, like we would want our kids to be loving to learn online, right? We want them to love what they are learning online. But on the other hand, our students, it's difficult for them, right? So we may have to move closer, a little more closer. Students are more motivated during online lectures. 70% no, no, students are not motivated. Are you happy about the student teacher interaction during online teaching learning? It is again almost 71% in disagreement, and then the remaining is neutral and agree and strongly agree, makes up just 12. That's 19% of the total. All right, and not 19. In fact, it is uh, 19. Students do ask questions or clear doubts during the lectures. Now, this is a ray of hope that we have to observe that, oh, at least they are finding it comfortable to learn online. And they have started asking questions. That's really wonderful, like, because what I could see here is 50% students ask questions. 50% students. That's, like in physical classroom, how many students ask questions? Perhaps no, right? So here, more and more students, if they are able to ask questions and clear their doubts, perhaps, like their growth would not stop, right? It won't deteriorate. They will continue to grow at the pace at which they are growing physically and mentally too, right? Uh, Feedback regarding online teaching, classroom teaching is more preferable. Both traditional and online methods have their advantages and disadvantages. Great. Now, yeah, this is something, like this time online teaching is only option to teach students. Online teaching is not effective on students because students are neglected their class and went outside. And one thing we can't teach, definitely practical subjects we are not able to teach. Online faculty students relationship is not as effective as live interaction. Online classes are possible only during pandemic. Live classroom, like, because best compared to network issues and eye contact, online not possible for pharmacy. Yes, so every field would have its own pros and cons, isn't it? And we could see, like what we as a group have been experiencing, right? And there are plenty of issues definitely that we are facing when it comes to dealing with the virtual classrooms. But as some of us have just expressed, we don't have a way out, right? We will have to continue with the online teaching. Most probably, like what we would be able to get is blending, right? Because the way things are taking shape in our country or even in the other parts of the world, it reflects that teaching is changing, right? We are maybe, like a developing country, whereas the country like Canada, which is also a developing one, that's how, like not everyone would agree. But if you have closely observed the BBC and the New York Times, you would see that a woman has to put her children in her van and travel almost 50-55 kilometers to the school where free Wi-Fi is available so that her children can study sitting inside the van for almost 5 hours, 6 hours, right? It would be difficult for them to manage themselves, like sitting beside a road, right? And it's horrible, right? Here in the villages, like the rural India, definitely the scene remains the same. Now, when it comes to moving towards the new paradigms, the old paradigm is being dropped for a new paradigm based on theory and research with clear applications to instruction. Educators must now think of teaching in terms of several different principal activities. This one, for example, says students construct, discover, transform, and extend their own knowledge. Learning is something a learner does, not something that is done to a learner, right? We have to ignite the learner. Students do not passively accept knowledge from the teacher or curriculum. They use new information to activate their existing cognitive structure or construct new ones. And the teacher's role in this activity is to create the conditions within which students can construct meaning from new material studied by processing it through existing cognitive structures and then retaining it in long-term memory when it remains open to further processing and possible reconstruction. Similarly, the teacher's efforts are aimed at developing students' competencies and talents. Students' effort should be inspired, and secondary school must add value by cultivating the talent. And that's what perhaps, like we have been able to do via these learning labs, right? We are attending this ATAL FDP. Similarly, we have the ATAL Tinkering Labs, right? We have very closely located an institute called Indian Institute of Technology, Gandhinagar in Gujarat. So, it is hardly 10 kilometers, but it's a whole, altogether a new world, right? Where all kind of research is going on. Then teachers and students work together, making education a personal transaction. All education is a social process that can occur only through interpersonal interaction, whether it is real or implied. And there is a general rule of instruction. The more pressure placed on students to achieve and the more difficult the material to be learned, the more important it is to provide social support within the learning situation. You cannot just leave them away, right? If you are making the learning process complex, you will have to stand by them. Challenge and social support must be balanced if students are to cope successfully with the stress inherent in learning situations. And learning results when individuals cooperate to construct shared understanding and knowledge. Teachers must be able to build positive relationship with students and create the conditions within which students build caring and committed relations with each other. Right. So this is where, like wherein we will go back to what we have just expressed, and we say that yes, when we are with students, we are quite closer to them, definitely, for sure, and there is no doubt about it, like because it does, like it does help when you sit together, when you stay together for almost 5 to 8 hours a day. And the school then becomes a learning community of committed scholars in the truest sense. And we have so many learning communities for sure, definitely in the form of various schools and colleges. All right. Now I had told you about another resource that I have found out. I have not created it, right? But I know it is worth going through. All right. Yeah. So from teacher centered to the student centered classrooms. Yeah, just a second. So the paradigm shift that we just talked about was, like instruction paradigm, wherein an educational institute exists to provide instruction, and now we are producing learning, right? I am sure. Uh, just a second. We all have heard of Khan Academy, right? Uh, Khan Academy was, like it was a tiny idea by Mr. Salman Khan to teach her niece living in Pakistan the subject of mathematics, and then like it becomes a huge initiative, empowering learners all across the globe, right? And by collaborating with the other teachers, other educators, a platform has become that produces learning. Then instruction paradigm mistakes the means for an end, like takes the means or method called instruction or teaching and makes it end purpose. Now, most common teaching method used is lecture. Now, does it promote student learning? Think back about your own learning. How did you learn? I mean, what were we doing when lectures were going on for one full hour? Like those benches are the proof where we have our drawings. And what do we remember the best? When it comes to the lecture model, it is economical. It is able to cover the large amount of information in a short period of time. And teachers are in the active role and students are passive recipients. So students are listeners, not learners when it comes to the lecture mode. And as per this research, you can just have a look at these 2 points. Most people only remember just 20% of what they hear. And the longer the lecture, less of the information ended up in students' notes, right? Because we all are humans. And evidence indicates that students learn and retain more information when they are actively involved in the learning process, right? So we have to engage them. We have to make them a part of what we are talking about, a part of what we are discussing in the classroom. Then the learning paradigm uses student-centered active learning techniques to get students involved in the learning process, right? So by making students, by keeping students at the center of the hub, right, it focuses on the students' needs, abilities, interests, and learning styles, and acknowledges student voice as central to the learning experience for every learner. Also, the learning paradigm requires students to be active and responsible participants in the learning process. Me being a language teacher, like I always tell my students that ask rather that how did they learn to ride a bicycle, and most of them say that they tried and they learned, right? They did fail but they learned. So the same applies to my lessons, that unless and until they speak, unless and until they start writing, they won't be able to improve their language, right? So it's all about trying your hand on whatever you are learning, and by involving the students into the process that we are initiating, we would be able to make them a part of what we are doing, and that definitely brings out the desired results. Then here some research theorists like John Dewey, Jean Piaget, and Carl Rogers, whose collective work focused on how students learn, is primarily responsible for the move to student-centered learning. And central to their ideas is that students actively construct their own learning, which is known as constructivism. We had a look at it in the slides that I was showing a while back, right? So central to their ideas is that students actively construct their own learning, right? And we just have to be a means into what they are doing, and that is definitely going to make sure that they learn and apply. Moving on, constructivism is the theory of learning which supports human construct meaning from current knowledge and structures. Learners construct new knowledge from their experiences. They incorporate the new information into the already existing framework. But constructivism does not suggest one particular pedagogy. It is associated with pedagogic approaches that promote active learning, right? That promote active learning, and that is learning by doing, right? We make our students part of various tasks and activities, and that's how they would be able to make sure that they are learning. Now, answering the question what student centered or active learning is, so it is, like any well structured teacher guided student centered activity that substantially involves students with the course content through talking and listening, writing, reading, and reflecting, right? So these are the ways we can involve our students into the process that we have initiated to make them be at the center of the process. And learning is most meaningful when topics are relevant to the students' lives, their needs, and their interests. So uh, we have those icebreakers, for example, like that initially when you just do not go to the class and start teaching, but instead what you do is you ask them a couple of questions. What have they done so far? What did they read? What do they plan to do in the future? And we try to derive to a point that, okay, what is their area of interest and what is it that's going to make sure that whatever we discuss is connected to their interests, their needs, and their lives. The students, like they have to be engaged in higher education, higher order thinking tasks such as being analytics and problem solving and synthesis and evaluation, right? That's what all pharmacy is about, perhaps, right? And unfortunately, the domains like medical and pharmacy are the ones that are suffering, in terms of teaching as well as learning, right? On both the sides, it is a loss, because when the students are not able to see things practically, perhaps, like they won't be able to uh, learn it in depth. And such activities allow students to apply what they have learned early on in the academic process, or give them a context or application for the new material. And the instructional activities should involve students in doing things and thinking about what they are doing. Also, the students are not just memorizing information, but they are allowed to work with and use the information alone or with their peers. And that is something, like that results into an all-round development of our students. Once they start talking, once they start collaborating, once they start sharing, it is all magic, right? And the diverse thoughts and perspectives are a necessary input to every class, right? So I believe strongly that the students do not just have to speak in language classrooms, they have to speak in all the classes, because when they speak, we would be able to know what they have learned, right? And that analysis is going to help us plan out our further journey of teaching, isn't it? And learners are treated as co-creators in the learning process, which is of utmost importance, like wherein you sit together with them, right? How many of us allow our students to come and sit with us? Perhaps 99% of us would say yes, we do, right? Going back to 2010, moving further back to 2000, that was an impossible scenario. Like the student would stand for half an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, until the discussion is over, right? If he or she is lucky enough to get into the cabin of his or her teacher. Examples of student-centered teaching strategies are interactive learning, group work, discussion forums, role-playing, hands-on projects, and these are some of the like tools that we have been able to employ, perhaps online, except the group work, like wherein the students too would be feeling that, oh, we are alone, we are sitting alone and we have to do things, though virtually they would be like in a single group, but when it comes to doing their tasks as a team, perhaps it would be difficult. But the tools that exist today to support learning, right, the collaboration tools, especially the Google Drive tools, like they have made it possible for all of them to even have fun while working on different projects, right? So 100 students sitting in 100 places work on a single document and come out with their own creatives. That is very much possible. Research on interactive learning. There was a study in 1997 that compared pre and post course test results of 6,000 high school and college science courses, and findings showed significantly more improvement in students' knowledge that used interactive engagement methods than those that did not. Right. So this is what happens when it comes to making our teaching learning process more interactive. And a 1999 study on the effect of college lectures reported, one, the longer the lecture, the less of material ended up in the students' notes. One, interactive classes commonly involve breaking up the lectures into multiple short lectures with a higher percentage of material being retained from each. And interactive classes included a short interactive activity between the short lectures, and that does help. Like that does relieve a lot of stress of our students. So in interactive lecture formats, students remembered more of the lecture material directly after the class and 12 days later than the control class that heard the same lecture without an interactive break. So allowing them to mix up, allowing them to communicate with each other, communicate with the teacher, asking questions, allowing them to raise their doubts, does help in enabling them to retain the information for longer period of time and not just to have it and throw it. The roles of ours, like faculties in terms of old and the new paradigm. So earlier we were disciplinary experts who impart knowledge through lectures. We were actors on the stages and we are delivering lectures. Now the new paradigm enables us to design learning environments that apply best teaching methods, right? We are coach interacting with a team and we are designing and playing a team game, right? So the things have changed a lot, like it is like watching a schoolmaster in the old movies of 70s and 80s and 90s, and then finding the Amir Khan of Tare Zameen Par in yourself, right? Isn't it? So that could be the best example, perhaps, like that has enabled us to move closer to the students, sometimes be friend to them, be brother or sister to them, and help them in the truest of its sense. Then the role of students, it moves from the role of note taker to the active participant in the learning process, and it allows students to take control over their learning and therefore forces them to take more responsibility in the classroom, which is very much required, isn't it? So by making sure that they know what they want is our victory, perhaps, like once we know what our students wants to learn, where our student wants to go, we have almost won the battle, isn't it? Because we have ignited, or we have had instilled that spark in that student, and then nobody is going to be able to stop him or her. The benefits of student-centered learning are, number one, it permits opportunities to connect the content to real life. Yeah, could you please go through all the 7 points once? So permits the opportunities to connect the content to real life. It also provides opportunities for higher order thinking as opposed to the passive listening. When they are passive listeners, perhaps like they won't be doing something actively. It promotes greater student faculty and student interaction, which is the need of the hour. It also increases the student retention, provides for improvement of social interaction skills, greater acceptance of others, and greater sense of community in the class. It does encourage alternative forms of assessment and the innovation in both teaching and student involvement. Now the challenges for against the implementation of paradigm shift: lack of confidence in trying new methods. Definitely, like we are comfortable doing what we are doing. So if we just go back to April 2020, right? We were all of us were in a dilemma, like whether to start using these tools or no. So initially perhaps we ignored for the month of April and May. By the time it was June 2020, we realized that now we don't have a choice. And slowly and gradually, we started moving with the time. In fact, not trend, but I would say moving with the time and the need of the hour, right? So perhaps, like now we have tried and tested the online teaching platforms, and sizably, like we are okay with it. Then fear or loss of content coverage, loss of control over the class, definitely, like mischievous students would be there everywhere. They will mute you, they will remove you from the class, right? Sometimes, like if you are using Zoom, you have some unwanted guests, they just enter your class and then start chatting with each other and so on. So definitely when it comes to teaching online, this is a risk. Then lack of prepared materials for use in the class. The ego of the professor, no, we are not egoists anymore. Lack of background or training in the use of active learning approaches. But definitely, like it does come with time, and the programs like this basically help us to experiment, right? And that those experiments do bring out good results. Now the examples of student-centered learning activities. Group read and present. You can just group your class into teams and form their teams as a mini organization. You can allow them to do various activities as the team and in competitive manner. So, like there is a kind of competition as well, and also team spirit, which results into amazing performance. You can allow them to read the chapters, summarize it, make PowerPoints, be prepared to present if you are given the chance. You can allow them to evaluate the presentations and improve, right? Like peer assessment is something that you must have all have heard. So you ask your students to evaluate each other's assignments, right? And that is the peer support, right, which would foster the learning of the whole class, isn't it? Because they would be finding faults, number one, and then helping each other. Like the students have also matured, right? So, when I say this, when I make this statement, it is at every level, whether it is standard 5 or the third year of your college. Fine. So, peer evaluation, peer assessment is something that definitely is going to be quite helpful when it comes to making your classes more fruitful. Then think, pair, and share. Begin by saying it's your turn. Look at your neighbor, the person sitting to the left or right of you. Make sure no one is left out. Nudge your neighbor and tell him or the most important fact you have just heard in the last 20 minutes. Right? So you sit them together, make them talk, make them observe, and you will have wonderful results. Then share one thing you just learned, share one question you still have, state 3 things you know that you didn't know before, right? Not here, it is KNOW and not NOW. All right. So ask your neighbor a question about the topic and see if he or she can answer it. Tell your neighbor how you can use the information you have just learned. These are some of the variations in the pair activities. Passing that question, get all your learners involved in creating and answering questions. And before beginning, give each learner a blank index card. Tell them you will give them direction at some point during your presentation and what to do it. Right? So that's another thing. And at the 10-minute mark, stop talking and say, you are now going to test the knowledge of the person on your right. On your index card or scratch sheet of paper, write down a question that pertains to the information you have just heard. You must know the answer to your own question. Pass the card to the person on your right, fox sitting at the end of the row, pass it on, right? Then you can say also, take a minute to read the question you have been passed and to write your own answer to it. Then pass the card back to its original owner, check the answer and let your neighbor know if he or she got it right. See, this is an amazing idea that's definitely going to like click, right? And it is even possible in online learning, wherein you have breakout rooms. For example, in Google Meet you have breakout rooms. If you have 50 students, you divide them into 10 different rooms and ask them to discuss something, right? Once they are done with the discussion for 10 minutes, ask them to come back to the main room and present what they have found out at the end of the 5 minutes or 10 minutes. That's all. It's wonderful, like, so we can definitely, it is all about having them in smaller groups so that they have control, right? Control over the discussions and they are able to stay focused even. Fine. Similarly, pass that answer instead of writing a question. Learners write an answer to a question and the person on the right guesses what the question is and writes it on the card. Similarly, students write an answer to a question you give them and then they compare their answers. You ask a few volunteers to state their answers and then you tell them if they were correct or not. All right. So there are plenty of things, like that we can do to make sure that they collaborate. But it's only as you begin to experiment with the new language will you realize just how like entrenched and invisible the old paradigm is. But as you and your faculty begin to speak the new language, you will also begin to think and act out of new paradigm, right? So this is from teaching to learning, our new paradigm from undergraduate education, bar and tag. All right, and the learner-centered classroom and school by McCombs and Whistler. Moving on, we have got almost 15 minutes. So I just wanted to share another beautiful thing that's happening around us. There's a website or an organization called Edutopia. You must have heard of TEDx, TED Talks, right? Many of you might have also heard about the Edutopia. Edutopia is basically a project that deals with education and provides you with innovative ideas based on experiments. All right. So here I have 3 articles that I have browsed through. 10 hallmarks of 21st century education and learning. It was written by John Soule in 2015. We will just have a look at first paragraph and then the 10 hallmarks. It says, with one prominent exception, 21st century teaching and learning best practices are largely the same even if the century numbers are inverted. Sound, effective educational best practices in the 21st century share certain strategic, timeless characteristics. To that end, we have identified 10 experience-based hallmarks of 21st century teaching and learning that can be used as touchstones in the educator's pedagogical approach to teaching and learning. And we are not going deeper into this. What John has identified is, one, project-based learning, which results into like hands-on experiences, collaboration, multidisciplinary involvement, student-centered approach, being real-time, real-world, and flexible. Similarly, ownership and engagement. When students are interested and invested in the completion of school-based project, they begin to own their educational processes. So we want them to be the owner, right, and engage in the growth that they need to achieve. Third one that he has cited is collaborative teaching and cooperative learning. Now, even today, what is it that we are doing? Collaborative teaching and cooperative learning, isn't it? So students working cooperatively in small groups to achieve project-based goals is a powerful strategy to achieve curricular and standards-based objectives, right? So that's how it works. Then citizenship, leadership, and personal responsibility. And that's what we have been teaching, perhaps, right? So then community partnerships. We had a project wherein, like our students, our first year students were sent to villages to find out what challenges the villagers are facing. And in the year 2016, we went out in nearby villages and with our students, like under the community partnership, we constructed toilets for the ones who did not have one, right? So it was like, like 5 to 6 toilets within 2-3 days. So that was an amazing experiment that we had, and that batch has just passed out. So community partnerships, then mastery of curriculum and higher order thinking skills. A shift from remembering to creating has created the buzz, right? We want our students to grow. We don't want them just to, like remember what we tell them. We want them to know what they want to know, what they are able to identify that, like, okay, this is the kind of concept that's going to make a difference in my life, right? So instead of just, like making them remember and express at the time of the examination, we need to instill the skills of creativity and analytical ability into them. That is the root of critical thinking, right? So the higher order thinking skill have to be imparted, and that's the key to the growth of the students. And the technology and 21st century skills. So technology is the number 2 pencil of the 21st century. As such, any good service learning project will be embedded with a wide array of real world technology based application, right? So technology is there. The teachable movement, reporting and celebration, and having fun with them, definitely. Like I don't know whether you talk to your students, right? But when I personally experimented and initially we just started with the syllabus for this particular semester, and then suddenly I asked myself, what are we doing? And I mean, there were the second semester students, they haven't come to college ever, right? They studied first year online, they entered the first semester online, then they are into the second semester now. They have seen their teachers just on screen perhaps, right? If they have ever turned on their videos, their peers, they have seen them in their photographs and the emoticons, etc. And like when I opened up, I told them something about myself, and then when they were invited to share, it was fun, and even without seeing them face to face ever, we have been able to create a kind of bond between ourselves, and that bond is something, right? I don't consider results as something. What I feel is the bond that is speaks for you. Okay, and the last 2 minutes, wherein here is another useful article on teaching through a pandemic, written almost a year back, right? So here it says hundreds of teachers, many of them operating in countries where teach from home has been a place of weeks, and weighing on the mental approach you need to stay grounded in the difficult time. It says expect trial and plenty of error. So start by being reasonable with yourself. It is in fact impossible to shift to distance learning overnight without lots of trial and error. Expect it, plan for it, and do your best to make peace with it, right? And when we read, almost after 1.5 years of this was written, we all could visualize that, we tried, we made error, and we have been able to achieve success in it, isn't it? Then acknowledge the extraordinary. Reset your baseline. We are all operating in the shadow of a global pandemic, and it is disorienting and limiting. Business as usual is unrealistic, right? Then reduce the workload for yourself and your students, right? If your school or college allows you to, definitely you should. No person is an island. Humans are social animals. Working from home or worse, from quarantine is isolating and often depressing for both teachers and students. Make a concentrated effort to speak to other colleagues and trusted professionals to provide emotional and psychological context to your work. Teaching at this moment is extraordinarily hard, and you will need the virtual company of people who are experiencing what you are, right? And finally, everyone thinks they can't before they can. I mean, that's what I told you, that in last March and April and the month of May, we all were in a kind of dilemma whether we would be able to ever do it online, or whether we would be required to teach online. We were quite confident about our hopes that, COVID is not going to hurt anymore, right? COVID will just come and go. We have so much heat around, the temperature goes to almost 45 degrees. I'm making some funny statements in front of the pharmacy experts, right? But that was the assumptions of laymen like me, that COVID, it won't hurt us because it will be almost 45, 46, 47 degree in different parts of the nation, so the virus would be killed. But that did not happen, and we had thought of, we almost believed that, I'm really sorry, I won't be able to teach online, but all of us are doing it successfully. All right, so that's all for now, thank you very much, everyone. Naitik sir, over to you.
Yes, sir. Now the session is open for the question and answering. If any participant has a doubt, then they can ask to the sir. During the time of the any discussion, kindly turn on your video.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Dr. Reddy.
If any participant have a doubt, then kindly turn on your video and directly ask to the sir. So I think all participants getting what they need, sir.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Naitik, and I would also like to thank everyone, like who are visible on the screen. We have Mr. Jinesh Gopi and Ajay Kharche, and we have Satyabrata Behura and Tushar Patel and Utpal Devanath. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. It was real good to be with you. Thank you.
Sir, it is a really informative and lively session. In your session, you have given the very good exercise to us, which make us bound with this session. You have really, in a good sense, defined that in old era, our role is like as an actor, but nowadays we become a coach who give the who interact with the team. And you rightly said, sir, that it is needed to upgrade our version with the technology. And really fruitful session, sir. We, on the behalf of our entire team of ARCP, welcome. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day and stay safe. We hope to see each other maybe someday. Thank you. Goodbye.
Okay. And sir, this one is the certificate of appreciation from our side.
Thank you, sir. Would you be able to send it via email, sir?
Yes, sir. Today night I will send you, sir.
Sure.
With the thanks later.
Thank you. Please give my regards to RH Parikh, sir. Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
okay, sir. Okay, sir. Bye, sir. Now the time for the participant. If any participant want to present their achievement, then the session is open. And one more thing, to be with the group till you get the certificate, because it is essential to give the feedback on the AICT portal after completion of the program. And when I will update the attendance of you all, then after you will able to get the certificate. So be in a group till reach the certificate with you. If any participant has a doubt, then they can ask clearly here.